You'll never know the true form of terror until you're holding literal ticking time bomb in your hand. And to this day, the sound of a ticking clock sets me and my wife into a state of panic, and we're on drugs and treatment for PTSD.
The DOXA Film Festival opens today, and that is one of the documentaries, one of the films that you will see with a very local twist, Linda.
Yeah, that doc is called Manufacturing the Threat. And that couple, you might have seen them on the news over the years, because back in 2013, Amanda Carodi and John Nuttall, they're a Surrey couple, and they were kind of co-opted by RCMP investigators, seemed like one of those Mr. Big kind of stings, to create some pressure cooker bombs and place them on the grounds of the BC legislature for Canada Day, which would have created obviously mass destruction had these bombs actually gone off. But this couple, they were actually initially found guilty, I believe, and then these terror charges were rolled back because the court ruled that this couple was entrapped by the police.
BC Supreme Court judge describes as egregious conduct by the RCMP. This in the case of the couple who planted bombs at the British Columbia legislature 3 years ago. Without the deceit, threats, and encouragement of police, that plot would never have been carried out.
It strikes fear in my core even till today, because I remember watching it on the news cycle, but how this story is unfolded is absolutely fascinating.
It is, and that is why we have the documentary filmmaker here in the studio with us. Amy Miller, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a
pleasure to be here. You have the world premiere tomorrow at the DOXA Film Festival. Can I ask you, first of all, why this couple? Because in some ways, they just seem a bit simple. I mean, how did they even get on the radar of police?
Well, why this couple is because, you know, they were likely to be an easy target. And I'm guessing I can't speak for the police on why but, you know, this was a marginalized couple that there's history of mental health, they're low income, and, you know, it was likely that they saw them as an easy target that they could get away with, you know, doing a big entrapment case like Mr. Get Big, as you had referred to it, with success.
But to what end?
Well, you know, it's interesting because the day that they got arrested, Stephen Harper had a speech already prepared that he gave to say, hey, wait a minute, this was a huge threat to national security. We need to introduce the next bill, Bill C-52, which then did get, you know, go through. And in terms of, you know, having things organized, this was the case. They were ready to go with this bill. It was already all orchestrated.
Serious
so,
politics.
You know, you need to have a case to say, wait a minute, we have some national security threats to be able to justify, you know, enacting a bill like this, and that was the case.
Okay, but here's the thing, and I mean, we've recently seen the Trudeau government dealing with RCMP around weapons and that tragedy in the Maritimes, the massacre of a couple of dozen people. We are always led to believe that the RCMP are arm's length from the federal government, never the twain shall sort of interact. You're suggesting there was some kind of collusion almost.
Yeah, well, I definitely think we have to start having more conversations in terms of who benefits and who gains from the national security agenda. We have to acknowledge that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that we've seen just grow tremendously over the last 30 years, right? Particularly since 9/11, where national security became buzzwords. There was a lot of money, big budgets that kept on growing, and a lot of vested interest who wanted to see that maintained.
Right, they often say that war is one of the biggest money makers, right? So terrorism or terrorist threats or national security, that's what you're kind of rolling into that one ball of politics. The political will meets the opportunity to benefit. So was there a moment in making this movie where you went, oh my, I had no idea it was this much?
Well, I wanted to show that this isn't a single isolated case. And so, you know, the problem with making a film like this is that Canada does not make it easy for us to learn about acts of infiltration, agents provocateurs, cases of entrapment. We only hear about it in specific situations, like with the Nuttall and Cordy case, where it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and there was an appeal process where an entrapment case will come out, and there's a lot of access to information requests that go through. To do the access for information requests to learn about different cases, there's just block by our institutions. Canada does not make it easy. We do not have what I would say is a transparent system around our policing and around things like national security.
Here, if I may jump in on that one, because I just did a court case with the Crown that I was a part of. I was the victim.
Right.
And afterwards, I had to FOI and pay for the transcripts, and then I had to FOI and wait 90 days to get my file back from police. My file.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, even for yourself, never mind somebody trying to double check that things were done properly, the roadblocks are significant.
And you mentioned as well the fact that this couple from Surrey, they were not the only ones who kind of got caught up in these entrapment cases. And there was a really fascinating example in your documentary, I thought, about how Indigenous climate protesters and land defenders can also be caught up in this. And I want you to watch a clip of this.
If part of the response to global warming is for the Aboriginal communities to step up and say, not on our land, this needs to be corrected. The problem is what's happened in the Nuttall case becomes a blueprint for how you can deal with Aboriginal communities by planting agent provocateurs to undermine some of those movements and undermine the right to free speech and the ability to step up for something as critical as global warming.
Planting agent provocateurs.
That's interesting because we've recently had a big unsolved case in northern BC at the Coastal GasLink pipeline where allegedly a bunch of people wearing masks and outfits and whatever came in and attacked people and destroyed equipment. And there's always been confusion as to whether they were protesters or plants.
Right. And the thesis of my film is to say, hey, wait a minute, this is not an isolated incident. This has been happening throughout the history of Canada. It's been done since the inception of the RCMP and then further with the creation of CSIS, the Canadian Intelligence Service, and that it's targeted different people, and that I would argue if we expand our understanding of national security to include arguably the most important threat, which is the climate crisis and the well-being of all people on this planet as well as all creatures, then we have to be ready to assume that there's a high likelihood that these tactics will be used against climate,
activists or protesters. Yeah. Are we naive? Because of what you just said about how it has happened in Canada and people just go, oh, I trust that that's true.
I think with Canadians, there's always this, oh, we're not the big bad guys. That's in the US, right? It's not, we're not the ones invading other countries. Those are the Americans. That doesn't happen here in Canada. That's the FBI or CIA, down in the States. And there's this constant kind of feel-good, benevolent sense that Canadians relish in, that it doesn't happen that, here like that.
So we are naive.
So I don't know if it's necessarily a naivety or a feel-good posture that we've all just collectively taken on.
Very naive. So the world premiere of this, Manufacturing the Threat, goes tomorrow. The DOXA Film Festival is happening tonight, kicks off tonight, runs through until the 14th. Congratulations. It's a really fascinating, thought-provoking documentary, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I really hope that the film will be here in Vancouver in the next few months in theaters, and that your viewers will have a chance to see it if they don't make it tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
DOXAfestival.ca. DOXAfestival.ca. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
So great.
Wow. Thank you.
All right, coming up next on Steele and Vance, pop star Lizzo was kind of feeling the love at the Met Gala.
Feline?
Got it.
Who is this?
What the hell is going on here? We'll explain when we come back.
Oh, he's special, all right.